Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I shaved. I don't know if I look better or worse, but well, it's something different. Anyway, here in Ukraine, we have just gone through quite the day where the Russians hit all kinds of electrical substations and all the rest of it. The story is that in Kiev, something like I can't quite believe this number. Okay, so take it with a pinch of salt, but 80% of the population doesn't have access to water, apparently because of the water pumps and whatnot, and 30% of the citizens of Kiev don't have electricity. Now, do keep in mind a lot of these people live in high-rise buildings, and so to get up and down, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. It's of course going to be extremely difficult for older people. And so, yeah, the Russians today, they really started hitting the whole country hard insofar as the electrical system is concerned, the electrical grid system. And here in Kharkov, the lights went off a couple of times, but they sort of like blinked out. It wasn't like a total outage. But I know that in a lot of parts of the city, there is no more electricity and no more water because a lot of the buildings require pumps for the water. So there's that. But I actually wanted to talk about something different. I wanted to talk about inflation in Europe. Well, see, Eurostat released the figures for inflation, and they are ugly. They are as ugly. They are ugly. Okay, and I'll read them to you real quick. The numbers for Eurozone. Across the Eurozone, inflation is double digits. It's going from about 10% in Serbia all the way to, in the Netherlands, 16.8%. In France, it's 13%. In Germany, it's supposed to be 11.6%, but I don't buy that number. The French and German numbers, I just don't believe them. Okay? From accounts of people that I know in those two countries, it's a lot higher than that. And so, yeah, the Dutch figures I kind of buy when they say that it's 16.8%. The Dutch are very strict about giving accurate information. It's the French and the Germans who, for political reasons, tend to manipulate their numbers. And in addition to the Eurozone, that's all in double digits. Like Estonia has 22% year-over-year inflation. The Eurozone as a whole, it has an average inflation rate of 10.7%, which I don't believe it, but that's the number that they're saying, which is an increase over last month's rate of 9.9. So in other words, inflation is accelerating in the Eurozone. And in Poland, they have an inflation that, it's kind of like you can't believe it. It's just shy of 18% in Poland. The only other big economy the only other big European economy outside the Eurozone. And so the whole of Western Europe is screwed. Okay, their inflation is going out of control. And this is a key issue. See, a lot of these governments are saying that they're going to give people money for their energy requirements this winter. Because the issue is, of course, heat and electricity this coming winter. But the problem isn't money, it's supply. You can give people €1 million each, but if there's not enough energy to go around, it won't matter. But the European politicians, when all you got is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And they are hitting every problem with more money, of just printing more money. And so this inflation is just going to go through the roof. The euro as a currency, I don't think it's going to last much longer. Okay, I think that it'll just explode, especially if they continue with these policies of giving people money instead of telling people, hey, we're just going to have to cut back on electricity, cut back on the heating. They can't do that politically, and so they're going to give them more money and blame it all on Putler, of course. And in the end, what will happen is that all these euros that they print to give to the people so that they can buy electricity, so that they can buy heating, so they can buy food, well, it's not going to be enough. Because there isn't enough heating and electricity and food to go around. That's the real problem. And the European politicians don't want to face that reality. They don't want to face the fact that they put themselves in this position by depending on the Russians. Whether you think that was a good idea or a bad idea is irrelevant. That's what they did. And then when they did the sanctions, they should have realized, as all of us in the commentary community realized at the time, back in March, that this was going to hurt the European economy far more than it was going to hurt the Russian economy. And, well, here we are. Insofar as the United States is concerned, they're still claiming that it's under 10% inflation in the States. Bullshit. It's a lot higher than that. All kinds of friends are telling me about the prices going through the roof. And more importantly, that goods just, are taking, 6 months to get, where before you'd get them the next day. Okay? And so, look, the global economic situation is deteriorating rapidly. Now, the issue becomes, what will this lead to? It seems to me that the European leadership and the American leadership, it would most certainly be to their benefit to start a war with Russia or China, somebody. I mean, the Americans, in fact, call the Europeans today to, to insist on that the Europeans cut off trade with China and do all kinds of, sanctions escalator bullshit, right, against China. I think that the cosmopolitan leadership class that we have in the West, this cosmopolitan transnational leadership class that does not care about the people, but they're afraid of the people, well, they're realizing that the economic situation is just going tits up, and that maybe a good old-fashioned war, global war, World War III, but conventional, would be the way out of this mess that they created. And so, when I talk about inflation, in and of itself, I mean, you're probably experiencing it. Most of my audience is in Western Europe and North America, and a few in Australia, and a few in India. Hello, India. India's not suffering these problems, by the way, because they've made friends with the Russians. But anyway, to all of you other people out there in the West, see, your political leadership is going to try to start a war, a full-on, full-scale conventional war, in order to distract you from the mess they have made of the economy. And this mess of an economy is getting harder and harder to hide. And so, when these numbers come out, and these numbers have been massaged, they're not the real numbers, as I said before. Well, they're going to try to keep on massaging the numbers, even as the massaged numbers keep on climbing. And you, of course, living in the West, know that inflation is way over 10% in the Eurozone. Come on. I would venture to argue, I would venture to estimate, rather, that probably from what I've been hearing from a lot of different people in Europe and various data points and whatnot, I would guess that inflation is closer to 20% in the Eurozone. And in the United States, well, John Williams has been saying for quite a while that the dollar inflation is closer to 18%. Yeah, that seems like about right. By the way, John Williams over at Shadow Stats, he calculates inflation based on the old metric that the Bureau of Labor Statistics used to use back in 1995. And that inflation number that he has calculated is, like I said, closer to 18%. So the Western economies are screwed. And what does a failing leadership class do when it has screwed the pooch? It goes to war. Simple as that. Understand what's going on.